Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are checking out another Jurassic World Dino Trackers release, and this time we've got another Danger Pack figure. As you can quite clearly see, we've got the Austroraptor, and this is a pretty fun one, just because it's a species that, just like with the Nothosaurus, I really didn't expect Mattel to pull out, but they've been doing that a lot lately. Actually, they've been doing it a lot for a long time, like, giving us really cool, very obscure species that I definitely would have never expected to have the pleasure of owning from a Jurassic World line or a Jurassic Park line, and luckily Mattel continues to deliver when it comes to all of these incredibly obscure species, and the figure as a whole looks pretty cool. Of course, I would have liked to have seen more feathers on it, but considering it's a Jurassic World dinosaur, the Velociraptors in Jurassic World don't have feathers, the Pyroraptor does, the Austroraptors do not, so it's like 50-50. You really could go either way, so I guess they could have chosen to give it feathers or chosen not to give it feathers. It would have been really up to them, and clearly they chose to go the non-feathered route. But the figure does look pretty cool yet again. We've got a fairly fun paint scheme to it. Nothing, to really write home about, but it looks alright. And then here on the back of the packaging, you have kind of a checklist of all of the other figures in this wave of Danger Packs. So let's pop this out of the box and check it out. And here is our Austroraptor. Stands pretty nicely. Definitely nice looking here out of the packaging. Has that very unique and elongated look to the face, which I do actually quite like. And then you also, again, have a pretty fun paint scheme. I actually kind of like the paint scheme. It's not great. Of course, I would have loved to have had color out there onto the tail a little more. It's almost like your classic Mattel paint job with this one, but I do like the tones of color they've chosen for it, and the overall paint scheme looks pretty cool. It would have been nice to actually just to simply have had this brown kind of run out onto the tail. It would have really made I think, a pretty big difference for it, but it does seem to have a speckling to it, which is nice, so that kind of gives it sort of like the appearance of having color from head to tail. Of course, no painted nails, which also would have been a huge plus, but still not half bad either. So let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at this right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Austroraptor, you can see that it looks pretty nice. Again, the actual fine detail is fairly decent. Not anything overly impressive, but it looks good for what it is. One thing to really take notice about this figure, and you could probably already tell, is that we have this brownish coloration here running up around the eye socket and up toward the snout. And that brownish color has a pretty heavy gloss to it, which I'm not a huge fan of on dinosaur figures, and sometimes Mattel does a pretty good job of making it look alright. This one, kind of on the fence about. I don't know how much I really like that glossy look to the face here on this one. Like, they've done a good job with it in the past when it comes to, like, the Alioramus and stuff, but this one, I don't know, kind of, not too sure quite yet how I feel about the gloss coat, but you can also see that we have this really cool kind of like an orangish brown here running up and over the top of the head and leading back toward the neck, and then you actually have a few more little spots of that orangish tone here on the side of the head as well. And then we have a similar tone of orange for the eye, and the eye seems to have a black pupil, or at the very least a dark brown pupil. Whatever that pupil is, it looks pretty nice on the figure, and it's fairly nicely placed. We of course have an articulated jaw for our figure, which can open really wide, just like the recent Nothosaurus did. You can also see the inside of the mouth has a nice realistic tone of color for the tongue, as well as the skin here on the inside of the mouth. No coloration, unfortunately, for the upper side. The teeth are painted with a yellowish tone, also similar to what we had seen on the Nothosaurus, so it seems like it's similar tones of color that they're pulling off with this. It's not the perfect paint job for the mouth, because you can see like the tongue isn't perfectly painted. Some of the paint of the teeth have kind of like run there onto the tongue, but I mean, they are what they are. They look okay, I guess, but still, again, pretty fun looking, pretty unique figure that we have this time around from Mattel. But as you lead back here into the neck, you start to see almost like a scoot-like sort of slightly armored type of an appearance there to the back of the neck, which is pretty interesting. Moving down the side here of the neck, you continue to see that brown leading down and striping. It kind of starts out in one like big clump of the brown, but as you lead down into the neck, you can clearly see it splits into two sort of stripes running down the course of the neck. The actual skin texture of the neck as well looks really nice. You can see there as we take a look at it, you've got some creasing and some nice looking skin texture as a whole. There's definitely a speckling that you can see. You can really see it here on the underside of the lower jaw, moving down into the throat. The throat itself is also quite nicely sculpted. As you lead down here into the arm, we continue to have that brown, but it starts to kind of form back into kind of one like line, but you could still see separation in the center where we see the like yellowish brown tone of the body, which looks pretty cool. But you can see the actual skin texture of the body is really, really nicely done. Again, we probably should have had a feathered version, but the actual skin detail we have here looks great as far as the sculpt goes. You can see it's really vibrant, really impressive. The type of detail that honestly is just like aching for a dark wash to kind of climb in and out of those cracks and crevices of the skin. You can also see that there are a lot of sort of osteoderms all over the figure. Definitely a very bumpy appearance to the skin texture. And we also have a random little area right here of like some ridges popping up. It's also kind of a way to sort of disguise the Jurassic Facts app, which I do appreciate that they're trying to do something like that. There is the code if you'd like to add it to your collection. But, you know, when you get to this side, you can obviously see that that's the Facts app. But the kind of ridges do run along that area. They end right after the Facts app does, though. And then as you lead down into the arms of your Austroraptor, you can see again some more osteoderms, also some muscle definition. And the arm is the same brownish tone that we have here. I honestly would have preferred just maybe some of this brown run down into the arm a little bit, and then we transition back to the primary body color, but they chose not to do that. We do have pronated wrists as well, which is yuck, but again, that is what it is. A lot of the Mattel figures have that going on. You can see kind of like some quills leading off of the elbow right here, which is pretty much the only area that I see that's sort of, you know, gives us the slight hint of feathers, and that's really about it as far as that goes. But as you lead out, you do have some nice scoots down the fingers, as well as some, you know, decent sculpting for the fingernails. No nail paint, they are just the brownish tone, again, that entire arm is. As you lead back up here, you can see a few more, again, osteoderms and stuff here in the thigh region. As you lead down, you can see that we have the musculature in both the thigh and calf, as well as the kneecap nicely present right there. And then you lead down, you've got a pretty nice looking foot sculpt with some scoots down the toes. And again, you can see a few more of those sort of speckles picking up here and there. And there's also a dew claw. Again, no nail paint, which I really wish we'd start to get nail paint, but I think at this point, continuing to repeat that is like beating a dead horse. But as you lead out here into the tail, you can again see more of that kind of splotchy coloration like the speckles, but you can also almost see, again, some more of that coloration deeper into the sculpt. So it's kind of similar to some previous Mattel figures where they're kind of created with that type of alternate color in the material, and it's just the way that they are made. But you can see a few more of those osteoderms and stuff, almost kind of like some osteoderms that sort of resemble ridges here along the top of the tail. Only 3 of them randomly show up, but you do have a pretty nice curve for the tail as you lead out, really sharp curve at the tip of the tail. But if we turn it around and you get a look at the opposing side, you can see it's pretty much the same over here. No real big differences or anything outside of the fact that the leg is leading on this side, whereas the leg was trailing on the previous side. But the eye paint and everything looks good over here. Looks just as precise as what we had seen on the initial side. The detailing of the underside of the figure as well looks pretty good. You can see the figure's pretty much loaded with those speckles everywhere. They are just all over the place, which I actually do quite like because, again, it does at least give it sort of the appearance of a little extra coloration. But definitely another fun figure from Mattel. Again, I would have liked it to have been feathered, but it's not the end of the world that it's not. Again, like I said earlier, some Jurassic World Raptors are feathered, some are not. So they chose to go the almost entire body of this one not feathered, except for just the elbows having a few random quills, but still a pretty fun looking figure overall. As far as articulation goes, again, we do have the articulated jaw, which opens pretty wide. We also have articulation in the neck, even though it is a little bit stiff. You can see we can get that nice positioning where the dinosaur could be down looking for some food or up really high. I will say that's the jerkiest neck articulation I think I've ever seen for a Mattel figure. The neck is usually really smooth as far as the articulation goes. Not so much on this one. But you can see we also have arm articulation forward and back. Again, it doesn't move out away from the body or anything. It's just straight up forward and back, which is also a little bit jerky. And then you have the leg articulation also forward and back, which also is jerky. And then, of course, the swivel tail, which we pretty much always have. And that's about it. Pretty much your standard when it comes to this type of figure and the articulation we usually get. But for a size lengthwise, you're looking at just a little, actually almost 7.5 inches. We're very close, or around 19 centimeters. And then for a height, again, in the position that it is currently in, you're looking at a little under 3.5 inches or about 8.5 centimeters, maybe a little bit over that. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Austroraptor. And you can definitely see that it's exactly the size that you would think it would be. Pretty much exactly the size, again, of what a raptor would be presented as in the Mattel line. So hopefully these figures should show you that. But if not, for another comparison, there is the Extreme Damage Velociraptor next to our Austroraptor. So with these figures here in comparison to each other, I really think that size comparisons at this point aren't really needed, because you can obviously tell it sits right there in the same similar size range to your usual Mattel Velociraptor. Also, I wanted to point one thing out that's actually really cool about the packaging I didn't notice when the figure was in the packaging, is we have a totally different style of terrain back here. Like I noticed for the aquatic or even semi-aquatic animals that we've had kind of like an ocean type backdrop, but for this one we have more of like a desert-like setting, and I've noticed that others have a different type of setting. So I think it's pretty cool that they're trying to match up the type of terrain and area where the dinosaur would live kind of in the background of the packaging. That's something I didn't notice prior with these new Dino Tracker figures. So this brand new Danger Pack Mattel Jurassic World Dino Trackers Austroraptor is another pretty fun figure, honestly. I actually like it a lot more than I was expecting to, and definitely is, you know, again, even though it's not feathered, it's a really cool take on an Austroraptor, and I don't have any figures of this species in my collection at all, and that's something Mattel has done a lot of, is introduce new species to my collection, so kudos to them for pulling that off. But again, sculpt-wise, even though it isn't feathered, it does have a really nice, very highly detailed appearance to it, and it has a lot of really, really nice, really vibrant skin texture throughout. We've got a nice mixture of skin texture as well as osteoderms throughout pretty much the entire figure, which does help to give it a pretty cool look. Again, except for that one area of the elbows that kind of has like some quills, which are just a little bit out of place and random. But again, detail-wise, it is very nicely done, as pretty much every Mattel figure usually is. On top of that, we've got an okay looking paint scheme. I think it starts out strong when you look up there in the face. The coloration's, looking really good as you lead down the course of the neck and you lead out into the body. And then, of course, it diminishes as we lead out into the tail. And we really could have used a little more coloration leading out onto the tail. It would have definitely helped to make the figure look nicer. Nail paint as well. But those are pretty much our standard complaints when it comes to most Mattel releases. The one good thing about this one, though, is the fact that the coloration kind of tapers off in a really nice natural way to sort of like an individual stripe as you lead out toward the hip region with that brownish tone. And then we do at least have a nice mixture of color that was created when the figure was created, like it's implanted, I believe, inside the sculpt as far as like the material that they used to create the figure. You could see some like slightly alternate tones of like dark browns and blacks or something in there. That does help to give it, again, a little bit extra coloration, which I do quite like, and at least helps to give it a little bit more color to the body. Again, you also have some articulation. It's a little bit jerky on this one, a little bit more jerky than it usually is when it comes to Mattel, but still not bad, and definitely helps to give you some options as far as posability and playability. So as a whole, it's definitely another pretty cool figure from Mattel, and definitely one that I recommend picking up. So if you can find it, check your local Rite Aid, because that seems to be the place that these are showing up currently. Again, I haven't heard of anyone finding them at Walmart or Target quite yet, but I'm sure that's not too far off once some more Dominion stuff kind of starts to sell and move through, because my Walmarts are just overloaded with Dominion. Like, I don't see any Dino Tracker stuff coming there anytime soon, but who knows, I could be wrong. Regardless, again, definitely worth picking up, so make sure you grab it if you can find it, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.